Hi, this is Dika from Dika's Adventures. Welcome back to my channel. I'm going to tell you guys a story today about my turkey hunt and the turkey that I harvested. Now, originally, I wanted to do it on my GoPro. I spot and stalk in the woods with a bow. I'm not in open fields. Sometimes I'm in thick stuff, and some people say that's not the best way to do it, but it's the way I do it, and I enjoy it. So I was going to use my GoPro, but somehow it malfunctioned, so I didn't get that opportunity. Maybe next time. All right. I'm going to be bringing my GoPro into the woods anyway to do a lot of reviews, and I got some other things that I want to show you folks. But anyway, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Ring the bell. That will alert you of any new videos that I got coming out. And hit that like button, and obviously I want everyone to leave comments or questions or criticism or anything. I accept all of it, and I reply promptly. All right. So I don't know the date. It was a couple weeks ago on a Saturday, and where I was headed it's private land. So it's this gentleman who has lots of turkeys coming into his yard and destroying his lawn, and I've been hunting there for, I think this is the third season, and I haven't gotten a bird there yet. Prior to that, he had birds flying like through his screen porch and wrecking his furniture and all types of things, so he wanted the birds out of there. So apparently he had more birds this year. So I got there a little late. I got there after sunup, and I park right in his driveway, and I basically walk into the woods in his backyard. So I walked in where I thought they might be, and I stumbled upon about 5 hens. They were yelping. They were very vocal, browsing a little bit on bugs and whatnot. But I could hear the toms in the distance, and either they were responding to them. I don't know who was going to who. I don't know if the hens were making their way to the toms or the toms were making their way to the hens. But I do know that the hens were stationary and the gobbles were getting closer. So I said, well, that's easy. I know I've already located where all the birds are. And so I had decoys with me and a chair, and I set them up, but I ended up spooking the hens when I did that. So I thought my hunt was over. So I kept calling, and the toms were still coming my way. So apparently I don't sound like 5 hens, but it worked for the time being. So I kept calling, and I was on, I don't know, a low point, and the grain or the elevation of where I was going up, and the toms were higher than me, much higher than me. So I kept calling, and they kept getting closer and closer. This probably went on for about a half hour or so. At this point in time, it's probably 6:30 in the morning. It had been light for 45 minutes maybe. So I kept calling, and they kept calling, but they stopped. They weren't getting any closer. So I just left my decoys in my chair there, and I went on foot, and I just kept calling, and I kept getting closer to them, and they kept responding to me, so I had an idea of where they were. So probably at about 40 yards, I was able to visualize them before they visualized me, which I found to be very strange because they had the higher ground. But it was just the way that where I was hunting, there was a lot of ledge, and it was just the way the terrain was and where I was that they weren't able to spot me. So I walked maybe another 10 yards or so they were within 30 yards of me. And I've taken 30-yard shots before, but I don't like to, because where I am, the woods are really, really thick, and if I don't have a clear shot, it's going to hit a twig or a branch or something, and then I'm going to lose the bird or not even get a good shot off. So I don't like to do that. I would like them inside of 20 yards if I'm going to take a shot. So there was a stone wall that I came upon, and it was probably about 4 feet high. So I sort of crouched down behind that, and my right side was to the stone wall, and my line of sight was looking straight down the stone wall. Now these birds were on the other side, my right side of the stone wall, maybe at about 2 o'clock, and they were probably 25, 30 yards from there. So I did a couple calls and nothing. They didn't respond or anything. So I just hunkered down and I waited. They weren't going anywhere. They were just sitting there, and then they started gobbling. I didn't hear any other hens in the area. They gobbled about 3 or 4 times in a row. The main tom, excuse me, it was 2 toms and a jake. I failed to mention that. 2 toms and a jake, and the main tom gobbled maybe, I don't know, 2 or 3 times within a couple minutes, and I didn't respond. Then he did it again. He did 2 kind of quick ones in a row, and I'd let off 1 little yelp, and all 3 of those birds started marching towards my direction. So I was very excited about this. So if you can try to picture it, there's a stone wall to my right. It's about 4 feet. I'm kind of crouched down, and in front of me is a very large tree with a diameter of at least 1.5 feet. So they're coming from my right, and their direct line of sight to me is blocked by this tree, so they can't see me. So I did a couple more calls, and they gobbled, and they kept coming down, and they were coming down at a pretty good clip. So I just stopped calling. Now it was the 2 toms and then a jake behind them. The tom was probably close to 20 pounds. Now he came down, and he was coming up on the stone wall, which was on my right, and he jumped right over the stone wall, landed on the ground, and he was probably 12 yards from me. By this time, I was already at full draw, and I shot him. I feel like it was a great shot, right in the vitals. And the bird fell over, the wings came out, feathers everywhere, and he kind of flew and ran at the same time off, like right past me, towards this gentleman's home. And it just kind of rolled, and it was all disheveled, and it rolled, and it was laying sideways on the ground, maybe 50 feet from me. So I figured it was either bleeding out or dead. It was still kind of flapping a little bit. So I looked back at that one, and then when I turned around, the other tom was jumping over the stone wall. So I knocked another arrow, and I shot, and I felt like I hit that one good too. And that one went off in the opposite direction. It ran away from me, and it kind of flopped over, and it was on its side. Trying to explain. So they were on a high point. I was in the middle here, and then there was a bit of a ledge here. So all that terrain that I came up, that bird sort of fell down that. So I waited maybe 20 minutes. That jake came over, and the jake was all like hysterical and scatterbrained, and went over to the second tom I shot, and was like running around like a toddler. So I waited about 20 minutes, and then I walked up on the first bird, the first tom that I shot. That I got very, very close to that bird. I'm going to say 5 feet, almost, like I had an arrow in my hand. I was going to poke it, and it got up and ran, and then just collapsed maybe 10 to 15 feet, and it was dead. So I got that bird, and I picked it up and took it to my truck, which wasn't very far away. I took it to my truck, and then within 15 minutes or so, I walked back to try to find that other tom. And I couldn't find it. There was a big puddle of blood there. Both birds, you could have tracked them like deer. I mean, there was trails of blood. It was great. So the other tom, the jake was nowhere in sight. And the other tom, I don't know where it was, but I had a blood trail to follow. So I followed it for maybe 50 yards, and then it just disappeared. I went from like streaks of blood to quarter-sized droplets to pinpoint droplets. And the woods where I am, they're very thick, and if I couldn't see it anywhere, I piled up, and what I did, I just did a little radius, maybe of I don't know, 15, 20 feet to see if I could find it, and I couldn't find it. So I lost that bird. So I went back to the truck, and it wasn't a bad sized bird. I bet it weighed 18, 19 pounds. I never had it weighed. I did take some pictures of it, so I have some pictures here for you. This is a picture of the bird with the arrow that I used. You can see the end of the arrow. It's all covered in feathers because the arrow is a little sticky when it comes out. The broadhead that I used for this one was a Schwacker 100 grain. It's a 2-inch cut. I used multiple different broadheads. The second Jake that I shot, I used a G5 Magnum, which it's a fixed blade with a 1.5-inch cut. I'm not sure that it matters. I mean, if you hit a bird in the vitals are about the size of my fist, so you have to hit it in the vitals. Or I've never had too much luck with the shooting at the head. I find just because of the terrain that I shoot in, sometimes I'm threading the needle to get a shot off on these birds. And those big ones, the guillotine one or whatever, where you shoot for the head, I mean, they're like 2.5, 3 inches wide, and they hit stuff, and I end up losing the arrow or losing the bird, or it just doesn't work for where I am. So anyway, I have some more pictures of the bird. This is a picture of the beard. I believe it was about 8, 9 inches long. Like I said, that bird bled a lot, so I hit it in the vitals pretty good. Here is a picture of the spurs. You can see they're black. I was surprised. A lot of the spurs that I see, they're red, or they have this sort of like yellowish to them with black tips. But these ones were straight black. I made a little trophy out of them. And here is a picture of the breast meat after I trimmed it and cleaned it up. So that's my story. I didn't get the second bird. I would have loved to have gotten it on film with the GoPro, but it just didn't work. Because what I did is I had my GoPro on a stake, and I just sort of pushed it into the ground, and it was looking right at me, and I didn't have to go anywhere else. And you would have caught that bird coming straight at it. It would have been great. But what can you do? Like I said, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Helps me out a lot. I can't grow without subscriptions. Make a comment, ring the bell, and let me know. Let me know what you think. I'm open to criticism. I'm open to anything. But in the meantime, be well. I'm going to have some new videos coming up, and hopefully you watch them. All right? Bye-bye.